Yeah. What's going on? Hello, welcome, peace to everyone. So good to have you here on the Boom Bap Chat, number 41. We have another legend in the building, one of my favorite artists of all time. We will get into that in just a moment. But if you don't have your book yet, the Boom Bap Review, bam, you can get it. You can start reading it for free at boombapreview.com. Just go over there, read it. If you like it, you can buy it. Also, if you're in the Cincinnati area or you want to come visit at some point when it's safe to do so, make sure you hit up Everybody's Records over in Pleasant Ridge. They have dope vinyl, CDs, tapes. They got all kinds of stuff. And we like to show love because they're always showing love to the hip hop community. So we like to reciprocate that and show love back. All right, without further ado, we have an MC in the building tonight that has built up a legacy over his life and over his course of music. And we're just so very, very honored and excited to have one of the illest MCs ever in the game, one of the greatest. We have Speech tonight. Speech, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, man. Oh, man, I'm feeling so much love. The audience is huge, man. I love it,
man.
It's like the NBA bubble.
They're right around the corner there. Yeah.
They're right around the corner. I love it. I love it.
Yo, man, welcome, man. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here, y'all.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Also in the room, we have my man IOMOS, Profound, and my man Joe Thomas. And we also have Neville. And obviously, you can't see him, but he is here. You can hear his voice. We also want to welcome to the program Configure. What's up, Configure?
Hey, what's up, bro? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, live from the UK.
Live from 5 hours ahead, but I'm still doing it.
Yeah, thanks, man. Don't fall asleep on us, man. Appreciate it. Speech, man, I just want to show some appreciation before we jump into the conversation. There was, I mean, obviously, when I was coming up, listening to Arrested Development, like that all inspired me like no other. I remember running home after school to catch Rap City and to check out, you know, Tennessee, Everyday People. Like I just love the music. But there was a moment about, I don't know, 3 years ago, 4 years, I forget how long ago, you came to Cincinnati and did a performance at this spot called Bogart's. And I remember in the crowd, like you were talking in between a song and I don't know what you said, but something hit me like, man, this man has been putting it down almost 3 decades now. Yeah. And not just music, but as a leader. You know, oftentimes we say, where are our leaders? Where are our leaders? Like right here, this leader is right here, you know, and just to see that audience captivated and you taking them somewhere. I just really appreciate, you know, your through the years, just standing fast to what you believe in and growing. And I've heard you in interviews and how you've, you know, overcome things and have grown. So I really appreciate not just the artist that you are, but the person you are. So props to you for that, man.
First of all, man, that means the world to me. I appreciate it, brother. For real. Like, I'm not just saying that. That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. So we definitely want to jump into your new music. And music that we just found out, it came out today, a few hours ago. So we definitely want to jump into that, but we do want to go back a little bit. For many of us, I mean, we came up, we heard Tennessee, we heard people every day, we got hooked, Mr. Wendell, all of that. When you were, after you moved to Atlanta and you were starting to write these songs, do you remember who you were writing for back then? Like, did you have people in mind that you were like, I'm writing this song for this person or for that person or for this cause? Do you remember that?
Oh, definitely. In fact, it's pretty much remained the same throughout most of my career, not all of it, but like I'm from Milwaukee. Milwaukee is a very tough place. It's one of the hardest places for Black people to grow up, Black men in particular, and that's statistically. And the lifestyles between Blacks and everybody else is so stark where I come from. And so I was writing for Black people. I was writing for people that I saw on a daily basis and wanting us to be able to be redeemed, because I saw a lot of low self-esteem, a lot of self-hatred, a lot of just toxic things that was messing us up from going forward, and a lot of oppression. And so that was who I think, like when I wrote songs like People Every Day or Tennessee, and then obviously I write for me, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's I would say that.
Yeah, and you said that has remained throughout your
Yeah, pretty much. You know what I mean? Like, sure, there's some songs that are just for me. There's songs that I write that really have little to do with me, and it's the art of writing a song.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a song on my solo record that just dropped today, Expansion, and it's called Dance Alone. Well, I'm married, so I'm talking about meeting this woman at a club, but that experience is very far removed from me, but I still relate to and remember that experience.
Yeah.
So I have fun writing about that type of thing, even though that's not actually what I'm doing right now. You know what I mean? So there's some songs like that where it's about meeting a new girl at a club, and I'm not on that level right now. Like, that's not what I do, but I still like writing about the story of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I remember listening to an interview that you were in, and you were talking about writing Tennessee and how it was just like, the way you described it was almost like divine. Like it just like came out, like you didn't think about it. Do you still have those experiences now writing music, or does it get to be, harder work now as you go on?
No, I mean, in general, there still is experiences like Tennessee. Now, Tennessee will always be special for me because I lost my brother and my grandmother in the same week.
Yeah.
And that song poured out of me.
Yeah.
And I've always believed that when we lose a loved one, especially a close loved one, that they give us a gift. And to me, Tennessee was one of those things that they gave me. Like, the lyrics it was so much emotion going on that the lyrics just poured out. Yeah. And it was one of the fastest songs I ever wrote. And it will be the most special song that I may ever write because of the nature of why I wrote it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No doubt. Before I swing over to Profound or IO for some questions that they might have, I want to throw out an interesting question for you. I'm sure you get asked about, the early days, Arrested Development days, all the time. Is there a question or a topic around that no one ever asked you about that you wish people would ask you about?
I mean, there's certain joints, like there's songs on our first debut album that I wish people caught what I was saying in a deeper way that no one has ever talked about. So I don't want to ruin it now, but like there's a song on the first album that's called Dawn of the Dreads that
love that one.
Yeah, thank you. And like very rarely, if actually never has anybody ever asked sort of like what are the 3 layers of that song type of thing. So like things like that. But other than that, no, I mean, obviously I've been at it for 30 years and a lot of questions. There's not been a ton more. And, there's other things actually, as I think about it, like a lot of people misunderstand the depth of that first album. And they tend to feel like it was more of a pop record than it was. And that surprises me. And so, yeah.
Well, if someone were to ask you, what were the 3 levels?
You know what? I'll say this. Like the song is about at least 2 different things at the exact same time going throughout the entire song. So I don't even know if it's 3 levels when I think about it. It might just really be 2 levels. And instead of me saying, I'll just let, next time when you listen to the song, Dawn of the Dreads, 3 Years album, listen to like the 2 planes that I'm covering throughout the whole song. Cause I felt that was a really great piece of writing for me. Even though the flow isn't fast or it's not complicated, to me, what I wrote about and how I kept the 2 planes consistent throughout that song, I felt I was really proud of that.
Yeah, that's dope. You had the smash singles on there, but the song that probably spoke to me the most years later was Fishing for Religion.
Word up.
And I wanted to ask you, how do you resonate with that song today? Because you're like you were saying a lot of things to that song. Yeah. And like, where do you land now as far as religion and all that, and where have you landed?
And that's a great question, bro. I land in a similar spot that when I wrote it, because to me, religion has often missed the point of, or especially Christianity, like mainstream Christianity that I've noticed, tends to miss the point about activism. and what you could do in the present tense to change your situation. So it hasn't always done that. The Black church has been a pillar for freedom fights throughout American history. Many freedom fighters, Marcus Garvey, Harriet Tubman, Nat Turner, all read scripture in order to be inspired to rebel and resist. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's a passive religion, but I will say the way that it tends to get interpreted nowadays tends to be more passive instead of active. And so, yeah, I still feel that way today, but I had become a Christian, which I wasn't when I wrote that song. In 1996, I became a Christian, and I'm still one now. So I guess where I landed was probably different, than where I was at that time, which was just sort of fishing.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. That's cool. IO, Profound, you guys have any follow-up thoughts, questions you want to ask?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to, I know we on this hip hop thing, and to me, hip hop is life. So, Brother Speech, I wanted to ask, man, first of all, where is part 3 to the Nigga Factory, man?
Word up.
Brother, like, if you could, man, I know we're talking about music and everything, but I think that they coincide, man, and it's important. And MC to MC, I'd like to know, like, can you speak on it and what's going on with part 3?
Yeah, so first of all, Nigga Factory is the mini document. I mean, I know you watched it, bro. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a mini documentary that I did because for like 20 years or more, I've been seeing this dichotomy between what the music industry tends to push about Black people being niggas and hoes and bitches and thugs and gangsters and whatever, all of this stuff. And to me, after a very short time, it started to become a caricature of itself. Like, there is a slither of the Black population that's into all of that, but the rest of the Black population is not into all of that. So we may enjoy the music, we may, know people that's into that, but that's not every Black person. And so I started to see that there was this, evolution of more people being considered niggas in the Black community than just not regular, but just than Black people. Right. And it started to truly bother me. And even on People Every Day, I tend to talk about the nigga and the African and the Black man. So I try to define those terms and I try to stay consistent. I don't feel like nigga means Black man. Or Black person. I don't feel that way. I never have. So to me, nigga is more of a derogatory term. I know people use it as a term of endearment. I get all of that. But so anyway, long story short, I put that out. I meant to do in fact, I did a part 3 in 2019, like September or so. And the team that I work with to edit that video, they started having a lot of problems with their computers and crashes and all of this really weird, hard to explain stuff. And then 2020 happened and we were planning to finish everything, wrap it in a bow. And of course, 2 things happened. One was the murder of George Floyd and all of the worldwide protests. Like, it was the biggest protests around the world than anything in the past had ever been for civil rights. And so I felt like, well, let's add that to Nigga Factory 3. Let's not put it out the way it is. Let's add it. Then COVID-19 broke off in like late February, early March. And then that changed everything because my whole team and I weren't able to get together. We were trying to figure out what does quarantining actually entail? Like, how are we going to go through this? Right. And so now we're in 21 and COVID really, I think it changed everybody's life, but I can speak for me. It changed my life like drastically. Everything that I was working on in 19 and at the top of 20 has been put on hold, from tours to everything but records. The only thing I've been able to work on is music.
That's right.
That's
so
dope.
Yeah, that's what's happening. I plan to put that out as soon as things get back to some normalcy and I could get my crew together and we can finish it up.
That's dope. One other thing, man, about that, because as you was talking, it just made me think about something in regards to the Nigga Factory. Like, when we talk about niggas versus Black, in a sense, is that a metaphor like for MC versus rapper?
I love that. I never thought of it that way, but to me, yes. Like, to me, it is a metaphor between those that are in it for the real reasons and those that are just in it for money. You know what I mean?
Right.
And sort of losing their way. So I think it is a good metaphor.
Man, appreciate that. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree
That's,
too.
that's ill. That's
100%.
ill.
I agree.
Yeah, IOMOS, you have anything?
This
on
is
your
really
mind?
good. I mean, for me, because since we both from the Midwest, I never knew that you was from Milwaukee.
Where are you
I
from?
got family in
We from
Milwaukee.
Chicago.
I'm from Chicago.
Chicago. Okay, yeah.
So
Well,
you know, Chicago is
90
we
miles
cousins.
away, baby.
Right. You
Yep.
know what I mean? So I just wanted to know, like, what were some of your influences? Because you know how we are in the Midwest, we influenced by the East and we influenced by the West.
Yep.
So like, what it'd be interesting to know, like, who are your influences?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Like for me, bro, and I don't know when you were born or what era you're from, but like for me, when I was being most influenced for the Arrested Development sound initially, I was influenced by a lot more than New Yorkers or West Coast people were, in my opinion, because being from the Midwest, first of all, no hip hop was coming out of the Midwest back when I was like in the late 80s, early 90s. There was literally nobody jumping off. Common wasn't out yet. Kanye wasn't out yet. None of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, I listened to East Coast hip hop. I listened to West Coast hip hop. I listened to down south, meaning Miami, like Luke type stuff. And I listened to go-go in DC, house music in Chicago. I listened to so I had a lot more influences than a lot of the MCs and the producers from, in my opinion, New York or West Coast, because we listened to everything and we weren't, or at least my crew, we weren't devoted to either one. We sort of liked sounds coming from everywhere. And so we were more open-minded. And that's what I feel like my upbringing in Milwaukee, that's what it taught me. So I was a lot more open-minded. So the people I was digging on was, everything from Yellow Magic Orchestra, which is like dance music from Japan, to my man Juan Atkins, which was from Detroit, who was doing like techno type of music. And then I was into, of course, Mantronics and all the West Coast stuff, Man Parrish from the Bronx. I mean, it was like a lot of that early stuff. And then of course you're given like Rakim and De La and Tribe and Jungle Brothers and all of that normal, like what most people would know about hip hop. I was into all of that stuff too. But then I was also like in the ska music, like Fishbone and so I was into a lot of like what they would, I guess, would term alternative stuff too. I liked a lot of that music, a lot actually.
Yeah, that's cool. And speaking of music, my man Joe had a question, music related for you, I believe.
Yes,
Joe,
sir. So I'm originally from Kentucky, and so I grew up in that area. So I know about that influence, about listening to the East Coast and West Coast hip hop, and nothing really jumping off at that time. I was in high school in the early 90s when a lot of sampling was, in the music. And that's one of the things I liked about your early music, was where you got your samples from.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite songs is Africa Inside Me, and the sample that you used for that song was really, really dope.
Yeah.
Yep. But I wanted to ask you about sample clearances. Like, what was the most difficult experience you had in clearing a sample, and what was that for?
Well,
Dr. Prince.
I've had a few, bro, but I can mention a couple. I'll mention a few real quickly. Like on the 3 Years record, I sampled Prince. Now, Prince and I have this interesting reality with samples. So I sampled on a song called Children Play with Earth. I sampled Play in the Sunshine by Prince. He was on the Sign of the Times album. And it went perfectly with the track. And long story short, at that time, sampling wasn't really as concrete as far as the laws and the rules. So a lot of us in hip hop that were producing, we didn't know exactly what it was. We would hear rumors, well, as long as it's under 3 seconds, if it didn't have a melody, it was a lot of different rules that we were hearing, but none of them were really by law necessarily. So I put that record, Children Play with Earth, with this Playing the Sunshine sample. We tried to get it cleared. We had already mixed the record. It was already going to the pressing plant. and Prince wanted 100% of the song if I put it out. So we had to stop the press, pull it back, take that sample off, which back in those days, it wasn't Pro Tools or, Logic.
Yeah.
So you had to really recall all the knobs and all the twist of a mix down. You had to go and take pictures of all of that, recall it, retwist the knobs, get everything back with the mix and take that sample out. So we did that. That was one story. Another story with Prince was Tennessee. I sampled just one word from Prince's Alphabet Street song, and it was the word Tennessee. And I put that joint out with Arrested Development, and then as soon as it got as high as it was going to get on the mainstream charts, it got to 3 or 6, I forget, and then it went down to 4, and I got a call from Prince's office, and he wanted $100,000 for that one word.
Wow.
Dude was a savage.
At that time, it bugged me out, man, because I was like $100,000.
Yeah.
And so I gave it to him, obviously. And it was a good look at the end of the day. I ended up meeting Prince. We tried to meet up a number of times, and I met up with him at Paisley Park, and we talked about it. And I learned from him that was really a favor to me, because he could have either took it off the shelf or he could have demanded, half the
Way
song
more.
or whatever for the rest of the career of the group. And he didn't do that. He wanted just a little, compared to what it made, he wanted a little bit of money right up front. He took it and he just dealt with it. So it was all good. And Prince is my favorite artist anyway, so it turned out cool. So those are just a couple sample stories, you know what I'm saying? But I got a lot of them. Sampling has been interesting journey for a producer in hip hop, you know what I mean?
In the end,
I'll say one more story though.
Yeah.
There was a time when I was getting sued for certain really small samples on the 3 Years, 5 Months album. And just like one word or really little small stuff. And people didn't even notice it during the 90s. They noticed it like in 2004 or something like that. And at that time, there was these sample cops that were getting hired at these labels, and they were really good at like finding samples of old material. So anyway, there was a book, because back then it wasn't internet. So like there was a book of artists getting sued for samples, and it was about this thick. And it had everybody from Dre's Chronic album to me, Paris, X-Clan. I mean, it just had everybody. And it was a thick book. All of us was getting sued for this, that, and the third for all the material we put out back in the 80s and the 90s. So it was just, sampling has been a trip, man. And what I hate about it the most, like I love giving props to the people whose music that I use, but most of the time, 9 times out of 10, the artists don't own their own publishing. So you end up paying rich lawyers and rich record companies as opposed to the actual artist. So I have a problem with the way sampling is set up.
No doubt. Thanks for that question, Joe. I do have a follow-up question about Prince, because I heard you talk in an interview one time. Maybe I dreamt this, but I could swear you said that Prince had you over to the park and then watched you from behind a bush. Did I get that right? And I was listening to this interview, and the interviewer didn't ask the follow-up question. I was like, what is wrong with you? Why is Prince watching you from a bush?
Well,
because he's
I will
Prince,
say this,
that's
it
why.
wasn't a bush, but he did invite me to Paisley Park. And that was the first time. I used to hang with a bass player named Foley. He's a master bass player. He played with Miles Davis and Funkadelic and everybody. Anyway, Foley was good friends with Prince, and he invited me over to Prince's place, and he was like, we tried to meet up a number of times, me and Prince. And anyway, I got there, New Power Generation, or one of his amalgamations of his band was there, and Prince was behind a one-way mirror, or a two-way mirror, however you describe it. But I couldn't see him, but he could see me. And he saw, it was me, Foley, and his band, and they were whispering in my ear, because, he had a lot of very tight rules of being in his building. And so one of them was you couldn't look wherever he was, you couldn't look directly at him. That was his rules. So
it's a Jamie Foxx joke.
They were telling me in my ear, like, yo, Prince is right behind you, actually, but he's behind that mirror right there, and he's not coming out. So he invited me there to meet him, and then he never came out. And that was just one.
That's
of
insane, really.
I don't know where I came up with Bush. So it was a double mirror.
It was a double mirror, inside of Paisley Park.
It's just as weird.
Yeah, just as weird. Yeah, maybe more weird.
It's not. Yeah, it's probably more. Exactly.
It's like an interrogation room. You know how you got the detectives behind the glass?
That's what Neville
Yeah.
said. Neville just
Yeah,
said that
exactly.
FBI type.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that's
Crazy.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Charlie
crazy.
Murphy, true stories. Neville said
That's why I laughed at that. I was thinking about Rick James.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's hilarious. Well, listen, you're hearing, if you're listening to the podcast, you're hearing another voice jump in. This is Configure, and we want to
What's
bring
up?
him into the conversation because of the album that you all put out not too long ago. Phenomenal album. Before
Thank
we
you.
jump into the album,
Thank you, bro.
yeah, of course. How did you two guys meet? How'd that come
You
together?
figure you want to take it, or I've been
Yeah, bro,
talking
I'll
like
take it.
crazy.
Yeah, just to rewind back a little bit. I was signed to Chuck D's record label, Slam Jams, in 2017. Worked with Chuck and various other people. We had Sean P on there, had Rex on there, Spoonie G was on there, etc., etc. And then basically through that, Jahi heard me. I think he heard the Rex track, and he basically just hit me up and said, you know, Configure, let's link, let's do like an EP. And that EP morphed into an album. It did well. And obviously Speech, being a friend of Jahi, hit me up and he was like, yo, let's work. And so one door led to another. Chuck D led to Jahi. Jahi led to Speech. And then, you know, me and Speech just did it on a track by track basis. And that eventually morphed into the album that we've got. You know, Don't Fight Your Demons, which we're extremely proud by. So yeah, I'm blessed to have these opportunities, you know, relatively late because I've been in this game for like 20 years. I've been literally releasing music since 2000. So yeah, to have these things happen in 1 year, it's been a blessing, man.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. What would you add to that story?
Yeah, I
Speech.
mean, you know, Configure, what I loved about what he did with the Jahi record, Forward Future, it was like boom bap, but it had this sophistication of somebody that could appreciate it at age 52, which I am.
No doubt.
And at the same time, it had this real wide soundscape. Like sonically, it wasn't one dimensional. It had dimensions to it. And I was like, that's why I wanted to reach out to him and see what we could do. And I played him a bunch of tracks that I had already produced for the record.
Sure.
And then he was very cool. Like he was very honest, like, yo, this track's killer. This track needs this to me. And I like that. Like, I was like, oh, cool. So then he sent me some tracks and then I'd be like, yo, this is hot, you know? So
Yep.
it just, this camaraderie, you know, became real legitimate and authentic. And we never met each other to this day because this is all during COVID-19. So I haven't traveled like I usually do, like
Right.
going overseas. So I haven't met him in person, but we've been on interviews. You know, I feel like he's my brother now.
Yeah.
And,
Same, man. Same, bro.
so long story short, we just started, you know, building on this Don't Fight Your Demon. A couple other producers, Chris Acosta, Mark X, and of course myself is on there as well. But yeah, it's like, it's such a proud moment. I'm really, really super happy with that record.
Yeah.
It's
for
taken
sure.
off, bro. It's taken off to like a level we didn't expect it to go to, because just to add to that, it's been on Sirius XM, Rock the Bells Radio with, you know, LL Cool J. In fact,
Yeah.
Roxanne Shante was just playing it just today.
Yeah.
Roxanne Shante, you know, introducing our record, which is like
Yes.
crazy to me.
Yep. Legend.
We've had speeches being on Through the Strength of the Record, being on Vlad TV.
Vlad, This is 50.
This is 50.
All types of stuff. Yeah.
All types of stuff. Yeah. We've been on Spotify editorials. Yeah.
Yeah, you're on the Boom Bap Chat tonight.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah,
Boom Bap
yeah.
Chat with my man MC
Yo,
Till.
and
Big up MC Till for
shameless.
putting both my albums in that top 50, bro. Big respect
Yeah.
to you, man.
I was gonna say
man.
the
Much
album
love
made the
on
top
that.
50 in there. So yeah, shameless plug.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say someone's living under a rock. They come out from under the rock. They've never heard of Speech. They never heard of Arrested Development. Never heard of Configure. They get this album. You get one shot to hook them. What's the song that you would direct them to off the album? Don't Fight Your Demons.
Good
We'll go with
question.
Configure. Why don't you go first? What's the one song that you would give them to hook them in?
Wow, bro. Wow. It's like picking children. But I would probably say, even though I didn't produce it, it's either going to be Back Down, because that's like literally nobody expected Arrested Development to have the hardest track last year, or I would say possibly either Becoming or The Forsaken for different reasons, because Becoming is that song that's hit everywhere. Like I said, Sirius XM, playlisted everywhere. However, The Forsaken, Speech is just spitting those facts about where he thinks and where I truly believe he belongs in the pantheon of hip hop and on your top 20 lists and getting him the respect that I believe he deserves. So I love that as well. So one of those 3 tracks, I would say.
Okay.
But,
All right.
yeah, it's hard, man.
Yeah, I'm sure. How about you, Speech? What would you choose?
I agree with him. I feel like those tracks, one of the things I love about the Don't Fight Your Demons album is that when someone first puts it on, generally speaking, they're just sort of floating for a second. And then when those strings come on back down and then the beat starts hitting, I always like, whenever I see people play it live on Zoom or whatever, and they're just rocking it, it's sort of like a head tilt, like what, and I love that. I love that reaction. So I would tell somebody, peep that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Big up Chris Acosta for that, man.
Yeah, I love that song. I love you lyrically on there because, there have been artists, in hip hop, I won't name names, but they kind of started on a certain tip and then like all of a sudden they got hardcore all of a sudden. And it's like, but this isn't that. This isn't that. This is like a confident man saying, I know who I am. Yeah. And you should come up here with me because it's a beautiful place to be.
Right.
That's the feeling I got. It was just confidence, So I really appreciate that song. And Becoming, man, that was one of those, like, I like albums. I'm a person that likes to listen to an album from start. So I don't think in terms of like singles and stuff like that. Like I like to enjoy albums. But every once in a while, there'll be a song where I'm like, I can't go past this song right now.
Right.
Put it on repeat. And Becoming was that. I was like, man.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Becoming is a monster, man. When Configure first sent me the track on that, it just the groove in general was just so feel good that I was like, wow. In fact, I remember when I first did the lyrics to that, because I'm talking about, this young boy getting beat by his father, just all this domestic violence and all of this sort of evolution of this young man. Yeah. And I told Configure, I was like, is it too depressing? Like, did I just bring this song down? You know what I'm saying?
I loved it, man.
Loved the way you took it. Yeah, I don't think you did. I think you captured the moment in that song.
He truly did. Yeah.
Because I mean, with everything that transpired in 2020, it's still going on now.
No doubt.
It's like that feeling, like you captured it in your lyrics, but then there's just like the whole song speaks to hope.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes,
I agree with that.
Like the last verse
as well.
Becoming. Becoming. Yeah, no doubt.
Becoming. Yeah, super.
It's a process. It's a journey.
That chorus is just amazing to me, man. As soon as Speech sent it back, I was like, wow, okay, we've got this is the single. Immediately knew.
He did say that. Yeah, he said that immediately.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like the chorus reminds me of "I Know I Can," not the sound of it, but just the whole sentiment of it. I know I can be what I want to be.
Right. Yeah. Dope. Well, speaking of music, so if you're listening in and like I said, somehow you're under a rock, you didn't know Arrested Development put out a new album. It's called Don't Fight Your Demons. Go get it. You can get it anywhere. Preferably get it off the Bandcamp tomorrow on Friday.
Bandcamp, Arrested Development.
Buy the vinyl, guys. Buy the vinyl.
And they will get
vinyls available right now.
And Bandcamp is doing those Friday specials where they don't take any cut.
Exactly.
So all that money is going straight to Speech and Arrested Development. So make sure you support that in that way. But you also have another album, another project that came out today, Expansion. Can you talk on that, what that's all about?
Yeah, definitely. Expansion is, to me, what we're in the mode of, all of us in this world right now. Because to me, the world has been constricting, like morally, it's been constricting. Socially, we've been constricted. And this record to me is about expanding. It's about that other side of constriction. So it's going the opposite direction. And I feel it's really a melodic record. It's not like Demons where it's more hard. This record is more smooth. I would suggest people listen to this while they're just driving in their car, while they're whatever. It's more melodic. It's more that kind of energy.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe.
It is.
And it's a solo record. So I love the juxtaposition of what AD does and then what this record is for me as a solo artist. So I love it. Configure's all over the record again.
Oh, nice.
That's right. With our remixes.
Mad remixes.
Remixes, yeah.
Now, did you do the original beats for the album?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I did some. And then Chris Acosta, we just mentioned, he's on one of the tracks. Mark X is on another track. A brother named
Rambo.
Clint Taylor.
Rambo.
Rambo. So that's about it. I think those are the producers. Configure with remixes, myself, Clint Taylor, Mark X, Rambo. I think those are the producers on this record. Oh no, and you will is on.
You will, yeah.
Dope,
That's
dope.
right.
And you had just released a single, A Different World.
A Different World, yeah.
Addressing the terrorists and insurrection and all that happened on the 6th, I think it was. Is that on the album too?
It's the first song on the album.
Oh, first song. Okay, dope,
Yeah.
dope.
And that song, you know, when that insurrection happened on January 6th, the first time in my lifetime, at least, that there was not a peaceful transfer of power in America's elections.
Right.
You know, I was so like distraught by seeing what I saw, and I wanted to write something to it. I wrote and released a single. Configure came in with the remix at the final hour.
Yes.
And released that single by like 6 days later after January 6th. So I think it came out on the 12th of January.
Yeah, that's dope. I want to ask you a follow-up question on that if we have time. My sister asked me about the Hillman reference in the song, and I told her, I think it's from the show, A Different World. So what was going on in your brain to pull that reference into where we are in 2021?
You know, it's one of those things. Like for me, for most of Arrested Development's records, at the end of the day, I gotta find a seed of hope. Like there's like, I might talk about the most deep things. I might talk about depression. I might talk about death, hangings, everything. But somewhere in there's got to be a seed of hope. And that's just, I think that's the way I'm built, because I do talk about serious stuff, but a lot of the tracks will be either hopeful or some lyric or some sort of, I usually hang it somewhere with some hope. And A Different World is just talking about how we as hip hop artists can create different narratives. We got the #1 music genre on the planet Earth. And to me, it is the voice of the voiceless by nature. Like those that usually participate in hip hop, whether it's in Brazil or Peru or America, is usually the people that are the most voiceless that are participating. And so I feel like we can make a different world through this genre. It's just like owning a multi-billion-dollar TV station.
Matrix.
But I do think that analogy was dope, though. I gotta say.
What was dope?
Definitely.
The analogy
Hillman,
between
A
Different World, literally, and the show. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Sorry, speech. It cut out there for a second. Your video cut out
But
just for a
go
moment.
ahead, please continue, because I gotta. Please continue.
I don't know where it came out. So basically, it's like I was trying to like make that juxtaposition between the TV show and hip hop being the #1 genre and how powerful this music is. Like we have a chance to change the narrative throughout the world with this music.
Yeah.
So I wanted us to realize as hip hop lovers and people that participate in the culture that we can make a different world. And so I used the TV show just to sort of make it more fun, you know?
Yeah, that's
No
dope.
doubt.
That's super dope.
That's interesting that you said that, because when you said that, it made me go back to the Wise Intelligent when he was at a hip hop conference and he was talking about how hip hop turning from positive to negative was not a circumstance of history. It didn't just happen. It was intentional to take those positive images of Black people or people of color away from hip hop music. He was like, we were wearing what was he saying? We was wearing historically Black college and university sweaters, and we just had a sense of identity and pride. You know what I'm saying? Like Arrested Development and Brand Nubians and X-Clan, those groups gave us that sense of identity of who we were as Black people. So it was intentional for them to shift the paradigm in the way they did and the way they view people of color. So I appreciate you for saying that.
Yeah, it was changing everything. Like we were going to college more. We were starting Black businesses more, which were circulating in the Black community more. It was strengthening people. So it was real tangible results. And that's what I think the racists among us were scared of. Like they don't like that type of progression.
Well, listen, speech. We do have one more question from Neville here, if you have time.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, and then
it's a fun interview. Y'all are doing great, man. It's fun.
Well, I was gonna say, if you're open to it, I'd love to have you come back for a part 2, because I want to get into leadership. And kind of what I talked about earlier. I see you as a leader, and I think that there is things come in cycles. I do think we're kind of on the cusp of a new movement in hip hop. And I think that there's other leaders that are popping up, and it would just be a really fun and I think meaningful conversation to have with you.
I agree with that.
If you're open to that, we can set that up and we can have a.
No doubt. Let's do that.
Okay, cool. But before we have to wrap up, Neville, man, I want to bring you into the conversation. What do you have on your mind, my friend?
Phil, you just threw the awesome alley-oop. I appreciate that. So I have two questions. You could, if you only answer one of them, I'm all right with that. But two questions I have is, first and foremost, one of my favorite songs by Arrested Development, I'm bringing it back for a minute, is the Revolution song, which is interesting. Tilla's talking about leadership. Fred Hampton's around the corner. Judas, what is it? Judas and the Black Messiah. How did that song come about first? And then the sound of it, the African drums, the chanting, and then how does that line up with the Malcolm X movie? And then my second question is now, everyday people, that reggae, I'm West Indian, Neville, Jamaican, like that call and response and all of that. I know you said that you listen to a lot of stuff, but and you did get into production. And at that time, only KRS-One I know, and maybe a handful of other people were dibbling that, but you did that, whoa, and the call and response, it's like, that thing sets it off, especially in the video. And so between the Revolution, which is my favorite song, Everyday probably is my second favorite, like, how did the production come about, the influences, and then, I don't know, there's so many questions, but those two songs just hit me. So Revolution, Malcolm X, how does that happen, Spike Lee, and then Everyday people, the reggae influences. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So Malcolm X, you know, I love Spike Lee. He still is one of my favorite, you know, directors and visionaries with movies. And so I wrote to Spike Lee like eons ago, trying to get in some of his movies, and he never wrote back. So then later on, after Arrested Development started blowing up, he reached out to me, and we met up in New York at a club called Sweet Jane's, and it was us and Last Poets was rocking together that night. And he came backstage. I was so happy to meet him. We talked, and he said, yo, I want to do Arrested Development for this movie I'm going to put out called Love Supreme. And it was supposed to be about John Coltrane. And he ended up putting out Mo Better Blues. We didn't even get on that joint. He used Gangstar, Jazz Thing was part of the joint on that. And then he ended up calling us back and said, yo, I'm doing a Malcolm X soundtrack. And I was like, yo, this is way better than what I even wanted to do. And Malcolm X is literally one of my favorite like heroes in my life. And so, I immediately said, of course. But the thing that I was nervous about was Public Enemy just crushed Do the Right Thing with freaking Fight the Power. And that song was such a freaking anthem. And it was so well done. Shout out to the Bomb Squad and Chuck D and Alt Flav and everybody. And I was like, wow, can we make something that's even comparable to freaking Fight the Power? And so I traveled to South Africa a lot with our crew. We met and I spoke with Nelson Mandela. ANC, we donated a lot of money to the ANC as a group. So there was this record that I had in my collection from the ANC, a revolutionary record. And I got the
love that sample, man.
I got that from that revolutionary ANC record. And I use samples from the Zingalama Dooney album as well. But anyway, long story short, that was sort of the foundation. I used, I think it was an Average White Band, or maybe it was, I forget who I used with the intro bongos, which I wanted to set it off with that sort of, that tribal energy. And then I just used a ton of samples because I was in the studio in Brooklyn when I wrote that one, and just really layering a bunch of samples. I mean, stuff that I won't mention here because, you know, for obviously.
Sample lawyers are listening.
Hey, not Prince again, I hope.
So long story short, I was really proud of that record though. And I was super proud of the fact of working with Spike Lee. He had just done some stuff with Tribe Called Quest at that time. I think he did the Scenario video and other stuff. So it was just a pleasure to work with him. He's a super duper professional. And so that song, and I think it's funny working with Spike Lee, I wanted to do a really radical video because I felt like Malcolm X was such a, you know, I always picture Malcolm X with the auto, you know, the machine gun, like in the window, the auto, whatever, automatic joint in the window. And so I wanted to do a real like
AK-47.
hard record with that. And Spike was like, dude, that's too hard. Like the first version I gave him, he was like, dude, you got to tone this down. And so I
The
did.
BDP already did that.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So so I said, let's talk about a revolution. And he was like, this is it. So he was in the studio with me. He was chanting with the group, me and the group, saying revolution. His voice is on the record. And it was just one of the most special moments of my life. We went to the premiere of that movie as well, and just Denzel meeting him and everybody. It was just crazy. And then People Every Day, one of the members of Arrested Development, especially in the early group, is Razadon, and he was a Rastafarian. So he would bring records all the time, and from Jamaica. And so he put this on the original version of People Every Day. Because on the album, 3 years, you'll notice there's a slow version of People Every Day, and then there's a version that I remixed later. I made both versions, but Roz put that on there, but he didn't do the whoa. And so some of the stuff he gave me the idea to put that in there. Like, yo, he gave me tapes from Jamaica. I was like, that'd be fresh to start this whole joint off. So that's sort of how it, came together.
And actually, on the new joint, Speech makes a reference to that in the Forsaken.
Yeah, in the Forsaken,
Yep.
exactly right.
That's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
at a party, and it's all done. Yeah,
No doubt.
Yeah.
That's dope. Listen, Speech. I know for me, I can speak for my guys. We're loving this conversation, every minute of it. And we can keep going. We got all night. But if we need to go, we can bookmark it and set it up again later, depending on what time.
Definitely.
Let's do that. Let's do that. We'll bookmark it. We'll get you back on, and really want to talk about leadership and kind of pick up where we left off. So. Speech, man, just really appreciate you, coming on and sharing yourself with us, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate y'all, man. Make sure to rock the expansion record as well and support it. And I appreciate y'all's love, man.
Yeah, and before you go, do you have any way that you like people to follow you online on social media? Yeah,
definitely. Go to @speech__, whether you're on Twitter or whether you're on Instagram. Always go to brotherspeech.com. I'm raising money for Black colleges. I'm raising, knowledge and consciousness with these documentaries. I got the 16 Bars documentary where I go into a prison and I talk with inmates and work on music with inmates. That's out right now on streaming services. So just look up 16 Bars Speech. And then, of course, Nigga Factory. So there's a lot of different things I'm doing. Brotherspeech.com is like an all-around place. You can figure it all out.
Yeah, dope. So make sure if you're tuning into the show, make sure you support this man, support Arrested Development, support Configure. They're doing incredible work. So Configure, Speech, again, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
Much love, y'all.
You, man.
Yep.
Man.
Peace, fellas.
Peace.
Well,
man, that was dope.
Yeah, that was fun.
Really dope.
That was super dope.
Very dope.
Speech.
Really dope.
He's such.
How long have we been talking about getting him on this show?
You know, it's why we didn't say, man, we didn't. I forgot to talk about this, but we were just
52 days.
I didn't bring this up because we were just, flowing, having a good conversation. But, you and I, Joe, talked about working with Speech and Drez from Black Sheep. And we were supposed to have Drez on last week, but we have to reschedule it. But we're going to have him on. We just had Speech on. It's like, man, it's crazy.
Yeah.
We put that out there and here it is. We're chatting.
That's crazy.
So. All right, let's talk about some takeaways. I got a few, but who wants to jump in and share some takeaways from that conversation? Io?
I mean, for me, I love what Pro brought out. You know what I'm saying? The nigga, I never knew he did a documentary called the Nigga Factory.
Yeah.
And I love that metaphor because that's like closely related to my work. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Black studies using critical hip hop pedagogy, Black studies, and critical literacy.
Yeah.
And that's all a part of that, like helping young people to discover their identity.
Yeah.
Who they are, especially for youth and people of color that live in marginalized communities. So it was good to hear him say that, because that's what I'm about. Like I always tend to gravitate to those artists that help build the Black identity, and what I'm saying, knowledge and consciousness and awareness. those are the always I always gravitate to those type of artists.
Yeah,
hip-hop
that's dope.
artists. So
That's dope. That's
yeah,
dope.
that was a great takeaway for me.
Yeah, yeah. How about you, Profound?
Man, my takeaway is that it's very important to give people their roses and their flowers while they're here.
Yeah.
And leadership in hip hop is important.
Yeah.
It's very important. And I'm just ecstatic to see that this brother is still as active as he is. And the takeaway is that he's an everyday person, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's an everyday brother, and humble is not a good enough word to describe him. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's very engaging, man, and he seems to fit. He's one of the few that we have met in our lifetimes who actually seems to live what he records.
Yes. Very
You know
few.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's very few artists that do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
Joe, how about you? What's the takeaway for you?
Well, I pretty much kind of grew up with his music,
Yeah.
and through high school and college and beyond. So it was just a joy to kind of see him go back and talk about the mentality and the method that they did to create some of those works. That was really beautiful. But one thing I was thinking about is, you have people like him who are, into the consciousness of the Black man and music, and utilizing that tool to bring awareness to, people who are going through struggles and things like that. And I was thinking, well, who is kind of like the modern day speech in this era?
Yeah.
We knew, you had the Public Enemies and stuff like that back in the day, Brand Nubians, but I think that would be a good conversation to have in the next session. Is to,
Right.
What would he think would be a great, not like a mini me, but just somebody that he says, I like this dude. He's younger, but he's doing what I did,
Right.
20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. And what can we, as listeners and participants, what can we do, to help foster that next, those next leaders,
Yeah.
But yeah, like when you talk about that, it made me think about the transition from being a spectator to a witness to a spec actor. You know what I mean? Like, it's like people who listen to hip hop, they seem to spectate and watch, but we need more people to be active. And I think that's what speech represents. He's a spec actor.
Yeah.
He's watching the world. He's putting what he's seeing in the world in his music. And not only is he doing that, but he's active. You know what I mean? Like Pro said, like he's like doing things like him going to South Africa. And if you know the history of the ANC, man, they was doing work in South Africa to stop the apartheid movement.
Right.
But for him to be donating to that movement, not just talking about it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
doing it.
Yeah, man. Like that's all a part of leadership. And I'm glad you brought that out, Till. Like, because that's one thing I always say, like these rappers today, I feel like they scared to be leaders, man.
Yeah.
They're scared to like, and speech doesn't seem to have that fear. Like,
not at all.
This is what I'm about, and this is what I'm on. You either roll with me or it's fine. I'm not for you. You know what I'm saying? And I love that.
Because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for people to be in that position.
Exactly.
And with social media, and it's all about likes and views and things like that. You start getting into the fringes of what people are comfortable with. And that starts pushing people away, and then you're seen as unpopular, and then you kind of move away from who you really are.
Absolutely.
But
yeah, definitely. And one example of that, before we hear from Neville, there was a couple of years ago, Speech reposted this picture of I think Jay-Z was in it. It was like Rockefeller. I forget. You know what I'm talking about? Profound. It was all these really successful artists. Maybe Diddy was really.
All the moguls.
He reposted it and he said something along the lines of like, not all we shouldn't celebrate all success or something. The point he was making was that like there's some success that we probably really shouldn't be celebrating. Like, what did you have to do or say to get that success was the point he was making. And he just got blown up on social media. People were attacking him, calling him, Uncle Tom, and just all kinds of stuff. And he didn't back down. He leaned right into it. He did videos. He posted videos about what he meant. And he didn't back down at all. Like, he leaned into it and said, this is what I'm saying. And, if you want to disagree with me, go ahead. But I'm a leader. I mean, he didn't say these words, but this is what it felt like. I'm a leader, and this is where I'm leading people. So come with me or disagree with me, either way. I guess that's what I got out of this tonight, was like, he was every bit what I thought he would be and more. I always figured he was down to earth just through his music, and I saw him as a leader and confident, and he was and down to earth, and he was just all of that, like times 10. It was easy to talk to, insightful. I think Profound said it, just a leader, like a genuine good leader. So how about you?
Our mutual friend Jason Riley was messaging me today, and he was talking about how he knew we were pretty excited about it, and just he wished he could be on here, but he was very complimentary of Speech and saying exactly what you said. Just a great guy, humble dude, easy to talk to, and so it was really cool to see that. I'm sorry, Neville.
No, you're good. Neville, how about you? What were your takeaways?
My takeaway, some of them mainly were like not even what he said, it was what he didn't say. Things that I think about his legacy. Not cursing a lot like a Rakim, but still being respected. The spirituality, he touched upon it, but he didn't really have to delve in it too deep. But that as well, how the spirituality can still come through the hip hop, not be corny, and then that revolutionary aspect that he said, like, we talk about Christ and the Bible, but we don't talk about like the civil rights and the revolutionary aspects of it. Like, Jesus Christ was not walking around going along with everything. He would be labeled now a rebel, a troublemaker. He would go to jail. He'd be arrested. I mean, all of that stuff. And funny enough, the Fred Hampton thing's coming around the way, like I said before. And then I looked at the new album when I actually downloaded and purchased it. There's no parental advisory. And it's 20 tracks, like an hour long, no cursing. So I just think that that's awesome that he can keep that legacy from then till now. The only one that I know kind of like that, I think, is Rakim, but maybe one album Rakim had, or 2 albums, but for the most part, he was relatively clean his entire career. For
Heavy
decades.
D was like that too.
Oh yeah.
Heavy got props for that too.
Yeah,
definitely. And then his message, like I think he embodies, Speech embodies his message and lives it, like you said. So that's awesome. Those are my takeaways. Live what is it? Practice what you preach. What's that song? Another song? Walk it like I talk it. Walk it like I talk it. He does.
He does it. He does it. Well, listen, everyone here, thank you all for your contribution to the conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it myself. I'm sure you all did as well. If you're tuning in to the podcast or on Facebook Live, we really appreciate you tuning in to this episode. Next week, we have Rampage, the last Boy Scout from Flip Mode Squad. Going to be really excited to talk to him, pick his brain, see what he's got going on, new ventures he's doing. So that's next Thursday at 10. After that, we got some really dope MCs coming up and producers. We got Akbar, straight after Yes. We have Sean J. Period coming up.
My brother.
So we got some heavy hitters coming up. So make sure you stay tuned. If you don't have Speech's new album Expansion, it came out today. All right, today. And here in about 45 minutes, if you're on the East Coast, you can go to the Bandcamp and you can get it. All that money goes to Speech and Arrested Development. The new Arrested Development album is out. If you don't have it, make sure you go get it because it's super dope. So thanks for tuning in, and make sure you get the book, Boom Bap Review.
Shout out to Black History Month.
Oh,
Black History Month.
But every day is Black History. It's not just 1 month.
True. Yep. And we're bringing it back, man. I almost forgot, man. We can't leave it. This is a hip hop show. We can't leave until we do our shout outs. I'm thinking. We turn it off. Profound. Who you got a shout out tonight?
Dude, we can do our shout outs over the beats.
Yeah, you know how we do. Man, I'm gonna keep it simple today, man. I'm shouting out Bowling Brick, the whole Bowling Brick, everybody that's watching and listening. Holla out to Bowling Brick, man, and children and my mother and all of them. You know how we do it.
Right on. IO, who you got?
Man, shout out to Chicago, Toronto, my Boom Bap Chat family, my brother Ron and the D. Yeah, man. Shout out to Speech, man. He really moved me tonight, man. Got me really thinking. So shout out to Speech, this whole camp. And yeah, man, that's it. That's it, man.
Cool. Joe, you got any? Joe November?
Yeah, just shout out to all the people that I grew up with in Kentucky and in the city of Frankfurt. We would listen to this album. Mr. Window was really big amongst us back in that time. So shout out to all those folks. And my sister Mina. Shout out to her.
Right on. Neville, you got any shout outs for us tonight?
Yeah, shout out to Black History Month, even though it's the shortest month. To all freedom fighters worldwide, international, outernational, national, local, everywhere, man. Just, keep the hope alive. What is it? Keep hope alive, keep the struggle, man. Let's go. The struggle continues.
Free
It
all
ain't
political
over.
prisoners.
Amen.
Yo, shout out to Speech for sure. The whole rest of the development crew. Shout out to Configure. Make sure you get their album. If you don't have it already, get Speech's new joint Expansion. And last, shout out to my sister. She's a big Speech fan. I know she's going to be tuning into this episode. So shout out to her, and shout out to my daughter, Zoe. I know she's going to be listening into this one too. So shout out to all the fam. All right, y'all.
Cop the book. Cop the book.
Cop the book. BoomBapReview.com. Peace, 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 peace.